When was the last time you were truly in silence? Not the silence of exhaustion, the one where you turn off your cell phone at 11 at night because your body can no longer take it. Not the forced silence of a waiting room, intentional silence. Silence that you chose. Silence where there was no podcast, there was no background music, there was no social network waiting for the next scroll. There was not even a mental list of tasks that you were organizing while pretending to rest. Real silence where you were simply present without producing anything. If you had to think hard to answer this question, the answer has already arrived. There is something happening with the generation of adults you are part of. Men and women over 35 who have built functional lives, who work, who care for families, who have faith, who have read about personal growth, who have done therapy, who pray, and who nonetheless live with a persistent feeling that they are reacting to life instead of inhabiting it. A feeling that the most important decisions are made on autopilot, that the loudest voices always win, that there is something fundamental that should be heard and that simply cannot make itself heard in the constant noise of daily life. This is not pathological anxiety. It is not a lack of faith. It is the direct and predictable consequence of having lost a specific spiritual skill that no one realizes they have lost until the consequences become impossible to ignore. And this skill has a precise biblical name, it has a solid neurological basis, and it has a path of recovery that begins before the end of this video. Stay with me, because what I am going to show you today may be the missing piece in everything you have already heard about spiritual life, mental health, and decision-making. Let's start with a data point that will surprise you by the precision with which it describes your routine. Researchers at the Max Planck Institute for Human Cognitive and Brain Sciences in Germany conducted a series of studies on what happens in the human brain during periods of unstructured silence, periods in which no external stimulus is being processed. What they found was the following. The brain does not go into rest during silence. It enters into activity. A specific activity, coordinated and functionally distinct from everything that happens during the processing of external stimuli. Researchers call this state the activation of the default mode network.
Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life, a guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming, with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10,000 readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who were tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.
And what this network does during silence is exactly what most people never have time to do. It integrates experiences, consolidates learning, connects scattered information into coherent patterns, processes unresolved emotions, and formulates insights that simply do not arise during continuous stimulation. In other terms, silence is not an absence of processing. It is the state in which the deepest processing happens. And the average Brazilian adult over 35 is spending an average of 11 hours a day exposed to screens, according to data from the IBGE and complementary reports from the UFSC on digital behavior. 11 hours of continuous stimulation, which means that the deep processing the brain needs to perform so that life makes sense, so that decisions are aligned with the deepest values, so that spiritual perception functions with clarity. This processing is being systematically prevented from happening, not because you are weak, not because you lack discipline, because the environment was designed for this. Every notification, every scroll, every autoplay of the next video was engineered with precision to prevent exactly the type of pause that your neurological and spiritual system needs most. And the Bible describes this state of the impossibility of silence with an urgency that seems written for our historical moment, not for the desert of Judah or for the banks of the Jordan. In Psalm 46, After a sequence of images of absolute chaos, mountains cast into the sea, nations in turmoil, kingdoms that falter, comes one of the densest and most misunderstood instructions in all of Scripture. Be still and know that I am God. The Hebrew word here is rapha, and the translation be still captures only a part of what the term means. Rapha in Hebrew describes the act of releasing a tension that was being maintained by active effort. It is the word of the fist that opens after having been closed for too long. It is the word of the shoulders that drop after hours sustained by the weight of effort. It is the word of the warrior who can finally lower his weapons not because the battle is over, but because he recognizes that there is an authority greater than his own fighting in his favor. Rapha is not collapse, it is intelligent surrender. It is the decision to stop sustaining with one's own strength what can only be sustained by another source. And what follows the rapha in the text is crucial. And know that I am God. The Hebrew word for know here is not yada in the cognitive sense. It is not accumulating information about God. It is da'at, which describes an experiential, relational knowledge that happens in direct encounter. It is the same verb used to describe the deepest intimacy between two people. Be still and then experience, in direct contact, that I am God. The sequence is intentional and irreplaceable. First the rapha, then the da'at. First the opening of the fist, then the encounter. You cannot receive what is being offered while you are closed by the tension of constant effort. Silence is not just a useful spiritual practice. It is the neurological and spiritual condition for certain types of knowledge to be possible. If you are listening to this now and recognizing in yourself the deprivation of real silence that we are describing, if you are realizing that it has been weeks, perhaps months, without a genuine period of intentional stillness, click subscribe now. Because this type of content, which connects the richness of Scripture with what neuroscience confirms and with what you are living in your practical life, is what we deliver here every week. Click the red button and activate the bell. Now stay with me, because the story I'm going to tell you now changes everything about how you understand silence. In the first book of Kings, chapter 19, we have one of the most human and most theologically profound accounts in all of Scripture. And it begins in a place you probably would not expect to find one of the greatest prophets of the Old Testament, under a tree, exhausted, wanting to die. Elias has just lived through one of the most extraordinary moments in the history of biblical prophetism, Mount Carmelo, the confrontation with the 450 prophets of Baal, the fire that descended from heaven and consumed the wet sacrifice, the rain that came after 3 years of drought, the most spectacular and most public manifestation of the power of God in his entire prophetic career. And now he is under a tree, afraid, desperate, asking to die, fleeing from Jezebel, who threatened to kill Elias after the defeat of her prophets with exactly the same intensity with which he had faced 450 enemies the day before. How is the same person who saw fire descend from heaven now afraid of the threat of a single woman? The answer is not weakness of faith, it is exhaustion, deep burnout of the type that happens after prolonged exposure to high-intensity stimuli without any period of recovery. What researchers at Yale University who study ministerial burnout describe as post-adrenal collapse, the physiological and psychological state that follows periods of extreme effort without real rest. The nervous system that was kept in maximum activation for too long collapses not in moments of crisis, but shortly after the crisis resolves, because only then does the guard drop. Elias was not in a spiritual crisis. He was in physical, emotional, and relational collapse after a season of maximum intensity without recovery. And what God does before Elias under the tree is one of the most tender and most pedagogically precise descriptions of restoration in the entire Bible. A revelation does not come. A correction does not come. An exhortation about faith or courage does not come. An angel comes with food, and the instruction is of a simplicity that seems insufficient for the size of the collapse. Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for thee. Elias eats, sleeps, eats again. And only after that, after physical care and real rest, does the 40-day journey to Horeb, the mountain of God, begin. And there in the cave of the mountain, the encounter happens that is the central point of everything we are discussing. God instructs Elias to go out of the cave and stand on the mountain, and then comes a sequence of phenomena of absolute power, a great and strong wind that rent the mountains and break in pieces the rocks, an earthquake, a fire, three manifestations that, in any other biblical context, would be directly associated with the divine presence, exactly the type of spectacular manifestation that Elias had just experienced on Mount Carmelo. And the text records something disturbing in each of them. The Lord was not in the wind. The Lord was not in the earthquake. The Lord was not in the fire. Have to the fire a still and delicate voice. In Hebrew, kol demama daka, kvol demama daka, literally a voice of fine silence, a voice that only exists within silence, that does not compete with the wind, the earthquake, and the fire, because it does not need to compete. It waits, and it becomes audible only when everything else stops. This is the theology of listening, and it has direct implications for how you live your week. You are waiting for God to speak in the wind and in the earthquake, in the great movements, in the spectacular revelations, in the emotionally intense experiences of worship that produce powerful but often fleeting catharses. And while you wait for the spectacular, the Kol Demama Daka continues to speak, in a frequency register that is only accessible in the silence you have not yet created. Researchers at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, who study the states of consciousness associated with spiritual and intuitive perception, have documented that experiences described as sudden insight, perception of purpose, or clarity about complex decisions occur with much greater frequency in states of low sensory stimulation than during states of high emotional activation. In other words, the insight you are waiting to have in the intense worship service is much more likely to happen in the 15 minutes of silence after it. The wind, the earthquake, and the fire have their place. The Kol Demama Daka has its register, and you will not hear one while you are totally occupied chasing the other. Go to the comments now and write Rapha, just that word, Rapha. Because when you write that, you are declaring, I release the tension of the closed fist. I recognize that there is a voice in the silence that I have not yet learned to hear, and I am willing to create the conditions for that to change. Write Rapha now. But here is something I need to say clearly, because there is a distorted version of what we are discussing that produces a specific harm, and that you have probably already encountered. There is a current of popular spirituality that transforms silence into an amplification chamber for one's own desire. That says, stay in silence and hear your inner voice, because it is infallible. That positions personal intuition as the supreme authority, above scripture, above community discernment, above any external perspective that might question what the silence produced. This is not what the Bible teaches, and this is not what Elias experiences in the cave. When the Kol Demama Daka speaks, the first thing it says to Elias is a question. What doest thou hear, Elias? Not a validation. A question. A question that invites Elias to articulate where he is, what he feels, and what he is doing, so that he can be reoriented by a perspective that is beyond his current perception, deformed by collapse and isolation. Biblical silence is not a mirror that amplifies what you already think and feel. It is a window to a perspective that is beyond you. And this distinction is absolutely fundamental, because the silence that only confirms what you already want to hear is not spirituality. It is loneliness well decorated with spiritual vocabulary. How do you distinguish the two? The biblical tradition has a consistent criterion. What you hear in genuine silence often surprises you. It often contradicts what you expected to hear. It often summons you to something more difficult than the path of least resistance you were planning. And it often resonates in a confirmable way with Scripture, with the counsel of wise people who know you, and with the trajectory of formation that you can recognize looking back. What you hear in distorted silence always confirms what you already wanted. It always justifies the most comfortable path. It always produces a certainty that does not need external confirmation, because any external perspective that questions it is discarded as a lack of faith or spiritual discernment. The difference is audible when you learn to listen with this distinction active. Researchers at Yale University, who study the effects of contemplative practice on moral cognition, have identified that regular periods of genuine silence distinct from meditation focused on auto-suggestion, produce a measurable increase in what researchers call decentering, the ability to observe one's own thoughts and impulses from a position of certain distance without identifying completely with them. This ability is exactly what the biblical spiritual tradition calls discernment, the skill of not confusing what you think with what is true, nor what you want with what is right. Silence does not amplify your voice. It creates enough distance from your own voice so that other voices, including God's, can be distinguished from the background noise of the ego. If this content is making sense, if you are recognizing the real need for genuine silence in your life, and at the same time realizing that not all silence is equally healthy, click the like button now. Because when you like, you help this video reach people who are in one of the two traps we described, the one that never stops, or the one that stops but only to amplify what it already wants to hear. Click the like button now. Now I need to talk about what happens in the body during real silence, because most people cannot enter into genuine silence, not for lack of will, but because the nervous system no longer knows how to do it, and understanding why solves half the problem. The human autonomic nervous system operates in two primary states. The first is the sympathetic state, the mode of alert, action, and response to threats. It is the state that ensures you react when you need to react, that processes stimuli with speed, that keeps the organism ready for movement. The second is the parasympathetic state, the mode of recovery, integration, and deep processing. It is the state in which the body repairs itself, in which the brain consolidates memories, in which the immune system operates more efficiently. The problem is that the modern adult spends an absurdly unbalanced proportion of time in the sympathetic state. Every notification activates a micro-response of alert. Every news headline keeps the system in a state of threat monitoring. Every unresolved demand on the mental list of the day contributes to a state of low-level chronic activation that never allows for the complete transition to the parasympathetic. And the transition to the parasympathetic state, which is the physiological condition necessary for genuine silence, does not happen immediately. The nervous system that has spent 11 hours in continuous stimulation does not enter into genuine stillness in 2 minutes because you decided that now you are going to have 10 minutes of silence. It needs a deceleration ramp. It needs consistent signals that the state of alert can be suspended. It needs, in technical terms, what researchers at the UMB who study nervous system regulation call an expanded window of tolerance, the progressively developed capacity to remain in a state of low activation without the system interpreting this as a threat and forcing a return to alert. In practical terms, this means if you try to enter into silence and in 2 minutes you start to feel restlessness, an urgency to check your cell phone, mental lists arising with increased intensity, a feeling that you are wasting time, this is not a sign that you cannot do silence. It is a sign that your nervous system needs a period of progressive adaptation before genuine silence is accessible. Elias was not ready for the Col de Mamadaka immediately after Carmelo. He needed collapse, food, sleep, a 40-day journey, and a period in the cave. The process of reaching the silence where the fine voice is audible took time, and it was a physically conducted process, not just a spiritually decided one. Your inability to silence is not a spiritual failure. It is the physiological condition of a nervous system that has been kept on alert for too long, and it responds to gradual and consistent care, not to dramatic decisions of rupture. Activate the notification bell now. In the next video, I will go into a theme that directly connects what we discussed today with what we are building throughout this series. What happens to your relationships when you begin to live from silence instead of living from reactivity? Why certain people move away? Why this distancing is not rejection? And the biblical and psychological distinction between isolation and separation that completely changes how you interpret your relational environment when you begin to transform from within. Activate the bell now. The New Testament Greek word that most closely approaches what we are describing is hesychia, issachia. It appears in 1 Timothy 2:2, in 2 Thessalonians 3:12, and in other Pauline texts, and is variously translated as stillness, quietness, a tranquil life. But the original meaning is more specific and richer than any of these translations suggest. Hesychia describes an inner state of stillness that is not produced by the absence of difficult circumstances, but by the presence of an internal order that is not disturbed by them. It is the stillness of the heart that remains oriented even when the environment is chaotic. It is the inner silence that persists even when the exterior is noisy. It is the ability to not be defined by the noise around you, not because you are dissociating from reality, but because there is an inner center quiet enough to function as a point of orientation. The Desert Fathers, the Christian monks of the 3rd and 4th centuries, who withdrew to the Egyptian desert and developed one of the most sophisticated traditions of spiritual practice in all of Christian history, considered hesychia the most fundamental practice of all. Not the most advanced, the most fundamental, the base upon which all spiritual life is built. Because without the capacity for hesychia, prayer is performance, service is compulsion, and faith is managed anxiety, instead of life from a stable center. And they described hesychia not as a special gift reserved for the most advanced contemplatives, but as a trainable skill, something that develops through regular, consistent, and patient practice over time. Exactly as modern neuroscience describes neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to create new patterns of functioning through intentional repetition, you can develop hesychia, not all at once, not by dramatic decision, but by the same mechanism by which you lost the capacity for genuine silence, by daily repetition, by the consistency of small practices that teach the nervous system and the spirit that silence is safe, that the pause is productive, that the Kol Demama Daka is accessible to those who create the conditions to hear it. Now I'm going to give you 4 concrete practices, not abstract spiritual ideals, specific actions with specific durations that you can start today within your current routine without reorganizing your entire life. The first practice is what I will call conscious transition. Instead of trying to create large periods of silence that require reorganization of the schedule and that often do not happen because the bar is too high, start with the transitions. The moments of passage between one activity and another, before getting into the car, 2 minutes without turning on the radio, before opening your cell phone in the morning, 5 minutes with your eyes open but without external stimulus, before entering the house at the end of the day, a moment of conscious stop. These transitions are the natural cracks of the day, where silence has the least resistance, because the nervous system is already in the process of changing state, and you are just deepening that transition instead of filling it with more stimulus. Researchers at the UNB who study nervous system regulation in high-demand contexts have identified that micro-pauses of 2 to 5 minutes distributed throughout the day produce effects of attention recovery and emotional regulation superior to those of a single long period of pause in the middle of the day. The strategic fragmentation of silence is more accessible and more effective than the discipline of extensive silence that most people idealize and never practice. The second practice is the prayer of listening. This is different from the prayer of petition, which is where most people spend the totality of their prayer time. The prayer of petition speaks. The prayer of listening stops after speaking and stays, not waiting for an audible voice, not producing the intense emotional experience that confirms something happened, simply remaining available. The biblical model here is Samuel. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. Eli's instruction to Samuel was not, wait for a powerful experience. It was, stay available, respond when called. The positioning of availability is what the practice of listening develops, and it is independent of any particular emotional experience that results from it. The third practice is what I call the nightly review of discernment. 15 minutes before sleeping, without a screen, with a notebook if you want to record. A single question. What tried to call my attention today that I ignored because I was too busy to listen? Not a complete retrospective of the day, a specific scan for what was discarded as noise but may have been a signal, a coincidence that you noticed and forgot, a thought that arose in the middle of something else, an emotion that appeared without a clear context. The nightly review does not produce automatic revelation. It develops over time the capacity for attention to the finer registers of experience, the Kol Demama Daka of daily life. The Institute of Noetic Sciences documented that practices of nightly contemplative review, which in their secular form are called reflective journaling, produce a progressive increase in coherence between a person's declared values and their real decisions over time. In other terms, the regular review of what passed unnoticed increases your ability to perceive what matters while it is still happening. The fourth practice is the most challenging and the most necessary: the deliberate desert. Once a week or every 2 weeks, a period of at least 2 hours completely without digital stimulation. No cell phone, no podcasts, no background music, no mental productivity lists. It can be on a walk, it can be in a park, it can be in a chair on the porch. The content of the activity matters less than the quality of attention, which is available, which is not managing multiple tasks, which is simply present. Elias traveled 40 days of walking to Horebe before reaching the cave where the Col de Mama Daca awaited him. The desert was not the obstacle before the revelation. It was part of the process of revelation. The silence that the path produced was what made Elias capable of hearing what Carmelo, with all its spectacle and all its intensity, had not permitted. Your weekly deliberate desert is not time lost from productivity. It is the path to the cave, where the most important voice of your life can finally be heard. Is there someone close to you who is functioning in constant alert mode, who you know needs to stop, who never stops, who confuses perpetual motion with faithfulness and productivity with purpose? Send this video to that person now, because sometimes the permission to stop, given by Scripture, confirmed by science, is what someone needs most and what no one has yet given. Share this video. Before closing, I need to name something that is a real risk for people who take what we are discussing seriously. Silence is not the destination, it is the path of access. And there is a spiritual pathology that the Desert Fathers called acedia, and which modern psychology recognizes as a form of anxious dissociation, where the practice of silence becomes a form of escape from life and responsibilities, a way of using the vocabulary of contemplation to avoid the engagement, action, and risk that vocation demands. Elias left the cave. After the Col de Mama Daca, after the question, after the repositioning of perspective, he returned to the path, with a specific mission, with a successor to anoint, with concrete work to perform. The silence of Horebe did not make him a permanent contemplative. It formed him for the next phase of engagement. The Rafa, the releasing of the fist, is not the permanent state. It is what makes possible the reopening of the hand to receive what comes next. And what comes next always includes action, relationship, decision, and the movement into the world that silence had clarified, but that only action can transform. The silence you practice during the week is not the end. It is the preparation for the quality of presence that you will carry into everything else, into conversations, into decisions, into relationships, into work, into the life you are building. You have reached the end, and if the question from the beginning, when was the last time you were truly in silence, is still echoing, it is because it needs to. Let me summarize what you discovered today. Genuine silence is not an absence of activity. It is the state in which the deepest processing of the brain happens, documented by the Max Planck Institute and confirmed by the entire biblical contemplative tradition. Rafa is not collapse, it is intelligent surrender, the fist that opens to receive what constant effort prevents. The Col de Mama Daca, the voice of fine silence, does not compete with the spectacle. It waits for the silence you create. Hesychia, the inner stillness of the first Christian contemplatives, is a trainable skill, not a gift reserved for a few. And distorted silence, which only amplifies what you already want to hear, is the opposite of what Elias experiences in the cave, where the first thing the voice does is ask, not confirm. Elias left the cave transformed, with clarity on what to do next, with a restored perspective on what was real and what was the distortion of collapse, with enough energy for the next phase. The Col de Mama Daca is speaking. It will not compete with the noise, but it will not stop speaking either. The only question that remains is whether you will create enough silence to finally hear it. In the next video, what happens in your relationships when you begin to live from silence, from Rafa, from the purpose that is being formed? Why certain people move away when you begin to change? Why this distancing hurts, but is not what it seems? and the difference between isolation and separation that completely changes how you interpret your surroundings in this season. Until then.
Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life, a guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming, with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10,000 readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you, who were tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.